This is an older Speedotron pack. It's 2400 watt seconds of power. I recently got it. I actually got two of them. I got this older one, which is 2403B, and there's another one that I'm not showing here, but that's 2403CX. So the difference between the B and the CX, other than the age, is on this version here, it's got an old style sink. So the sink uses what's called a household plug. On the CX, it's a phono plug, and then the switches are different. So they're heavy duty plastic switches on the newer CX version than on this B. Otherwise, it's outwardly in the way you control the power is the same. I have never used a pack with this much power. I've always topped out at 1200 watt seconds. And, believe it or not, this pack has only one extra stop of power in it over a 1200 watt second pack. And that's because every time you double the power, roughly, you're adding a stop, or if you have the power, you're taking a stop out. And what I would say, if you've seen a 1200 watt second pack, they're like a little car battery. They're kind of heavy. This is taller and it's a lot heavier. So definitely not something that you're going to be carrying around outside of a studio. But in a studio, that height and that weight, not such a bad thing. For one thing, if you have it on the ground, you don't have to reach over as far in order to control it. And if you bump into it, it is probably going to hurt your foot before you're able to knock it down. So not a bad thing in my opinion either to have something that is secure, especially if you're in kind of a dark studio. So having said that, today a lot of people would think 2400 watt seconds or 1200 watt seconds is just way too much power to have in a flash. And especially with digital cameras, you can add stops of light without a lot of loss of quality just by adjusting your ISO. Um, and, with this pack, it has one nice feature, and that is it allows me to control the power and take out three full stops in 1/3 stop increments. And so that is in this photo here, you can see there's a button in the center right under the handle. It's called stops. And the pack, even though it is marketed as 2400 watt seconds, it is broken into three different channels. And so you can think of it as a pack that only has 800 watt seconds, or a pack that only has 1200 watt seconds, or a pack that only has 400 watt seconds. And if you use the channel C and start at 400 watt seconds and are able to use the stop button, you can take this pack, one head, down to 50 watt seconds. So that's the equivalent of more or less a speed light. So the way that works is if you plug in a light to channel C, you're starting at full power, that's 400 watt seconds. If you take it down a stop, then you're at 200 watt seconds. If you take it down another stop, you're down to, 100 watt seconds. And if you go down to -3 on this dial, what is 100 divided by 2 is 50 watt seconds. I don't know why you would ever use it at 50 watt seconds, but the reason I'm bringing that up is that there's a fair amount of control in terms of stops and thirds of stops, because this dial allows you to make adjustments in thirds, not just a full stop. And you just have to get a little bit creative in terms of where you're putting your lights, in channel A, in channel B, or in channel C. Now, if you want to get the full 2400 watt seconds of power, then what you do is you are going to be combining. And so on this switch here, if you look at the left and at the right, those two switches say isolate and combine. If they're left in the isolate mode, which they are right now, then you're saying anything plugged into A, the max is 800. Anything plugged into B, the max is 1200, and C is 400. If you were, in this case, let's say you're looking at the 800 switch over there, if you were to switch that over to combine, and notice it has an arrow to the middle, what that means is you're adding A and B together. So if you plug in a light in channel A or a light in channel B, then you're going to get A and B added together. So you're going to get 2000 watt seconds. And, likewise, if you were then to combine channel C into channel B, so that's the switch on the right, so both A and B are combined, then you're going to get 800 and 1200 and 400. You're going to get the full 2400 watt seconds of power no matter where you plug in a light. And that's kind of how this thing works. You have to do a few things manually in order to get it set up. But if you're working in a studio, and especially if you're doing kind of repetitive work, so maybe you're doing food photography or product photography, maybe some kind of fashion photography, you're going to more or less know the power outputs that are going to work for you. So you're probably not going to be adjusting your lamps that often. And especially if you're just getting started and you want to learn a little bit about flash photography, older Speedotron equipment has two things going for it. One is it is professional equipment, and which has kind of fallen out of favor. And the other is it's still professional equipment, and it's really inexpensive if you buy it used. So, I got two of these packs and a bunch of heads and other equipment, and we're talking, less than $200. That's not always what you'll pay, but you're not going to pay a lot. So, just a really inexpensive way. Also, as a side note, I guess, if you are working or trying to work professionally and just getting started, or even if you have your own company and it's established, you're going to make profit faster by paying off your equipment. The faster you pay off your equipment, the faster you're putting money on, into your pocket. And if this flash does the same thing as something that you might be tempted to spend $1,000 on, and you've only spent $100 on it, in essence, you have an extra $900. That's not bad. And you can probably imagine that this flash is going to hang around, for years. So you're not going to have to replace it. You are going to lose automation, and you certainly are going to lose portability. And those are trade-offs, that's for sure. But you're going to have a fast path towards making income. And if you do outgrow it, or you do need those other features like the automation or the portability, because you bought it used, you can turn around and sell it, and you're probably not going to make a lot of money. You're probably not going to lose a lot of money. And it's not probably going to be that hard to sell it. So that's just kind of the way I think of these things: is what's the features that I can get out of it, what's the value that I can get out of it, and recognizing that with this older equipment there are some caveats. And speaking of caveats, when you pick one of these up, you probably want to turn them on and leave them run for a couple of hours it's called reforming the pack. So there are capacitors in here. They can kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, I'm not an electrician, maybe they get a little bit stale if they haven't seen a charge in a while. So reforming the pack, I called Speedotron. They walked me through the process. You can get it on the web as well. What you do is you plug in a light, you plug in the power, you turn the pack on, you kind of do it in that order, and you let it sit for 1, 2, 3 hours before hitting the test button and firing the flash. And, if you can wait the full 3 hours, that might be the safest. But Speedotron also recommended doing this maybe every 6 months if you're not using them. These things were meant to be used regularly. So if you're not using them regularly, like I don't always do that, then they recommend reforming every 6 months or so. The other thing to think about with these older packs is, there's a lot of power in them. 2400 watt seconds is an awful lot of power. And what that means is you want to be very careful with regards to how you connect lights and how you connect the power source and when you turn it on. So kind of the old best practice is turn the pack off, unplug the power, and then take out the light. And if you were to plug in a light, what you would do is make sure everything is turned off and unplugged, and then you'd plug in the light first, you'd plug in the power second, and then you'd turn the power on. So you want to resist the temptation to move the lights from one socket to another while the pack is turned on. And that's doing it in the process that I've just explained kind of ensures that you're not going to have that issue, because some of the older packs, they can actually arc. They can send power from one plug to another, and I suppose you can get hurt. I suppose the pack can get hurt. I don't know. I've never really tried it. Never seen a video on it. I just don't want that to happen to me. So that's why I do that. And a lot of other people would do that as well. So yeah, these things are big, they are heavy, and they have a fair amount of control. And they have a pretty wide range, 2400 watt seconds all the way down to 50. And they require you to do a little bit of thinking with regards to how you distribute that power.